Hello everyone, welcome to the Florida Cannabis Market and what's next. I'm the moderator for this panel, Robert Roundtree. Just a little bit about me, I'm a serial cannabis entrepreneur. Multiple businesses in many facets of the space, from digital marketing with website properties like floridamarijuana.net, the Marijuana Solution, also as a partner in a recruiting company, Career Extracts, and a partner in Sunshine Cannabis, which has branded cannabis products through our partner Truly. So many of the issues that we're going to discuss today, both current and coming up, I've had to deal with or had some exposure to. 3 bank accounts have been closed over the years. 280E is a big issue. So we're going to get into a lot of that, and I'm very honored to be doing this panel with 2 very strong advocates and policymakers at the highest level of our state and federal governments. And so I'm going to do a little intro on both of our panelists, and then we're going to get right into it. So first we have former Congressman Carlos Curbelo, and he's been a long-time public servant in Miami-Dade on the school board, and most recently as a 2-term U.S. Congressman. In February, he made some headlines as a former GOP Congressman, joining a major cannabis trade association. And this came as a surprise to many, but to those in the know that have been following him, it came as no surprise that he joined one of these major cannabis trade organizations because he's been a strong advocate for cannabis for quite some time. He was one of the congressmen who championed the States Act, which was a bill to protect states' regulations from federal government interference. And also while in office, he attempted to try and get 280E fixed for us. And that is the issue where cannabis companies can't make any deductions, and we pay more than the lion's share of taxes. So everyone, please welcome former Congressman, Mr. Carlos Curbelo. And next, we have one of my favorite people in the state at the current moment, true trailblazer, and that is Director of Cannabis, Ms. Holly Bell. And, you know, earlier this year, something really unheard of happened in the state of Florida. We had a Democrat running on a cannabis platform get elected as the Commissioner of Agriculture. That wasn't what was so unheard of. What was unheard of, within a very short time of her being in office, she appointed a Director of Cannabis to oversee the state's hemp program, implementation of it, and drafting the rules. And Director Bell comes with a very deep history and experience in banking and finance, and also helping cannabis and hemp regulations get started in both Tennessee and Colorado. So she brings a wealth of experience here and is definitely going to help us get one of the country's best hemp programs off the ground. Excuse me. So since her short time being Director of Cannabis, Director Bell has already shown that she is going to be very open to public input, very transparent a process, and it's just, for me, been a breath of fresh air compared to what we've been dealing with in Florida as far as our interactions with bureaucrats and policymakers. So it's really great to have her here. I know a lot of y'all are very excited to hear from her and where we're at the state of the hemp program. She's a huge asset to our farmers here and the consumers and residents of the Sunshine State. So everyone, please welcome our first Director of Cannabis, Ms. Holly Bell. So I guess I'll open up with you, Director Bell. The very hot topic of conversation is Florida's hemp program. The governor signed, I believe it was 1020 into law, and everyone wants to know, where we're at with that and getting rules done, and how that process is going.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for those great, kind words and welcoming me. I'm so excited to be a new resident of Florida. And on the 19th, we closed on both houses and our furniture arrived, so we officially live in Tallahassee now, and we're very excited. And my husband got to come with me today for the first time ever to meet all of you and start to hear what I do. I've been doing on a daily basis since February. Like Robert said, I was brought here by the commissioner to start a state hemp program and also assist Department of Health with edibles for the medical marijuana program and receive consumer input from that program also. So some of the things that we've done on that, I want to touch on real quick before we talk about hemp, is we've created a consumer portal on our website, freshfromflorida.com. I actually have a cannabis option out on our website, and it takes you to a landing page where you can get up-to-date information on both medical marijuana and hemp. So the other thing we've done is we've created an advisory committee, and we have Dr. Gordon and Eric Stevens are both in the audience today. They're on our medical cannabis advisory committee. We will meet monthly and talk about things that will help move the program forward in a very proactive way to help consumers and get the edibles off the ground. So on the hemp side, we were thrilled to get Bill 1020 passed in May. The governor signed at the end of June. It became law July 1. That bill, if you haven't read it, is out on our webpage, and it starts our state hemp program. We have already gotten our draft rules out. So what I tell people is I think of the bill as an outline for what we're supposed to do that legislators give us, and then we have to draft rules, which is the detail of the who, what, why, how, when, and where we're going to run this program, so that you as consumers know what to do. And we posted those draft rules again on our website and some other systems in the state that you can read. We held workshops in June, and we closed public written comment for those draft rules where anyone was allowed to give us feedback on what we needed to change with our draft rules on the 19th of July. So I've been out speaking every day this week, and I haven't been in the office, but my legal team has been working diligently to review those 100+ pieces of information we got from the public about changes that need to be made. And I do believe in the next couple weeks we'll have a final draft of our rules for us to share with the public. So my legal team may get nervous if they hear me say that, but I know how good they are and how hard they've been working. What we'll do then is we will post those rules to a system called VAR, and it is an administrative system where anybody from the public can go out and read those rules and make comments. We will also get a review of those final rules from an internal group called JAPSI, and JAPSI will tell us if we've done our job and what we might need to change because maybe we haven't stuck to a statute or something's not going to work. It's required to be out there 21 days for the public to review. So if I get it posted in the next couple weeks, it sits out there for 21 days, then I probably have to make some changes. I've got to repost it for another 21 days. So we're looking at October before I could probably adopt rules and get the program officially underway. Now what that means is to cultivate, to process, to manufacture, all of that. I won't be able to accept applications until the fall. At that point, we'll accept applications and we'll get the program underway. In the meantime, are there stores out there selling it? Yeah. Can I stop that? No, we're probably not going to do that. What I would tell people and what I do tell people is if you plan on opening a store of retail, if you plan on manufacturing a product, if you plan on bringing product in from another state, please read the bill. Please understand what requirements are going to be held to in this state for labeling, testing. That's pretty much out there in the bill itself. don't spend a lot of money and buy product that you will then have to turn around and relabel by the fall when we're out there regulating it. So if you're in doubt, call us, ask us. My group is very proactive. We want to help. We don't want to see somebody take a financial loss in this industry. And those requirements are frequently out there on my cannabis page also, or my hemp page. So in the fall, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. About the vaping, I white vape currently and only represent highly lab tested products. But on our labeling, we don't show that lab testing. Are you telling me that we're going to have to show the lab results on the label?
Not on the label. If you read Bill 1020, what it states is we want you to have a QR code or a barcode that would then take a consumer to a web page that would show them that COA. Okay?
Real quick, everybody, I know there's going to be a lot of questions that come up through the course of this. We're going to stop about 10 minutes or so before the end and allow for Q&A. So if you have a question that comes up, just write it down on a piece of paper and then I'll take the questions in so we can allow panelists to get through their presentations. Thank you.
So, cultivation, we will be regulated by Department of Plant Industry, and if anybody in here plans to cultivate, grow hemp, anybody in here plan to grow hemp? Okay. So DPI, Department of Plant Industry, they're headquartered in Gainesville. If you've grown anything else in the state, you've dealt with them. Very easy group. And again, in Bill 1020, it's going to state what you have to do to grow. It's pretty straightforward. You got to give me your name, your address, your GPS coordinates. You've got to agree to let us come onto your property to inspect your facility. You've got to agree to test your crop and notify us 30 days prior to harvest. Your crop has to stay within the 0.3 or low Delta 9 THC. And you've got to have no conviction of narcotics in the last 10 years. So it's pretty straightforward, just like the Farm Bill. There will be no limit on the number of licenses. There will be no limit on the amount of acreage that you grow. That's up to you. And we are going to allow inside grow and outside grow. So that is up to you. The place in which you grow needs to be properly zoned, and that will be up to your local government. You'll have to check with them about that. I frequently talk with local government officials that are struggling with the new law. So if you are out there applying for a license, whether it's to, retail, grow, whatever, when they give you questions back, remember this is all new for them too. I'm getting out there and talking to as many as we can, but they have a lot of questions also. So if you're running into a roadblock, say, I've got an idea, why don't you reach out to the director of cannabis? She could probably help clarify this for you. Here's her email. She talks to people like you all the time, and I can usually solve that issue within a day and get them the information they need to feel comfortable about moving forward. And we have several cases where we've done that. I just did one in South Miami 2 weeks ago for a CBD store. So other than that, that's kind of currently where we are on hemp. We may have some things change in the next month. I don't know. I'll be back in the office on Monday and see where my team is. But we're all very excited about the program. We feel there's a lot of opportunity, and we're all going to face some challenges as we implement this new program, but nothing that I don't think we can't work through and come out with some positive outcome in the end.
Thank you. Congressman Varela, what is the general feeling in Washington, D.C. right now to get some real policy reform going on cannabis?
Thank you. Well, first, thank you all for having me here today. For those of you who are from out of town, thanks for visiting Miami in August. That's very rare, and it's great to have you here. Our topic this morning can seem petty in light of what's happened in our country over the last 24 hours, and we certainly all keep those. I think it's 29 victims now in the last 24 hours who lost their lives. But This issue is important too, and when you think about federal cannabis and marijuana policy, there have been many victims over many decades. People who have been killed in the violent illicit drug trade, people who have been imprisoned for really no good reason, just a long list of injustices and inequities. So this topic is important, and while I was in Congress, I worked hard to try to modernize our laws, to make our laws consistent with what people all over this country are not just saying, but voting. Here in Florida, over 70%. And I commend the Commissioner of Agriculture, the Governor, really. This is quickly becoming a bipartisan issue here in Florida, and that's good news. And what we're focused on through our work with the Cannabis Trade Federation is making sure that happens in Washington, D.C. as well. I mean, think about it. This industry is growing, creating jobs and opportunities. I was walking around the EXPO upstairs, and I saw so many young people working, and that's wonderful, despite the fact that most companies pay an effective tax rate of over 80% because of Section 280E, which, by the way, that's how I got involved in the issue. I was a member of the Committee on Ways and Means, and someone came up to me one day and said, you know, cannabis companies that are operating legally in states cannot deduct any business expenses. I go, what are you talking about? That can't be true. And sure enough, it was. So that's how I got into this, and then the more I learned about it, the more of an urgency I felt to make sure that we reform the entire set of policies that govern cannabis in our country. So, high tax rate, very difficult to bank, very difficult to get traditional lending, and by the way, one rogue attorney general away from real legal exposure. And I think everyone in the industry felt that 18 months ago when Jeff Sessions announced suddenly that he was revoking the Cole memo. So the most important thing I think anyone in this industry can do, the states are very important because you can't exist or operate without them, but besides that, the most important thing anyone who cares about this industry, who's active in this industry can do is get involved at the federal level. And I think the Cannabis Trade Federation is by far the most capable and professional group out there right now working with legislators who are looking for answers on cannabis. And look, getting anything done in Washington, D.C. is very difficult, which is why the legislation that we're supporting and that I co-sponsored in the last Congress is the States Act. It doesn't actually change federal policy, but it does defer to states. It does defer to administrators like Holly, to elected leaders like Nikki Fried, Governor DeSantis, whoever, however you want to fill in the blank. And that's good enough for now, in our view, because otherwise we're going to set a bar that's too high, and like most things at the federal level, nothing is going to get done, right? We've been debating immigration reform for 13 years. We'll be debating gun reform again here in the next few days. Unfortunately, it's likely nothing happens. So that's why last year while I was in Congress, together with Senators Gardner and Elizabeth Warren, that's a good sign when you have two people on opposite ends of the spectrum working together, we decided that the States Act would be the best solution. And in the House, Earl Blumenauer of Oregon and Dave Joyce of Ohio are carrying it, also a Democrat and a Republican. So I would just encourage you, as you try to figure out zoning and state policy and, of course, marketing and everything else that you will have to do, don't forget that probably the most important thing you can do is try to make a contribution somehow, whether it's by joining the Cannabis Trade Federation or reaching out to federal legislators to get all these laws changed. Once we get this changed, if this industry is growing now, I mean, literally, you've seen nothing yet. So.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Holly, you had mentioned that not going to be shutting down any of the existing companies that are selling CBD or hemp. There has been many articles, through the course of the last year, talking about an impending crackdown that may be coming. At some point, will there be enforcement for people that are not adhering to the rules that get adopted?
Yeah, sure, that's our job.
Okay.
But we're gonna be fair about it. We will give you okay, here it is, the clock has started, here's the timeline, and it'll be a fair timeline. Here's what you have to clean up, and here's what you have to get in compliance with, and start moving that forward. We will be out checking, and we'll give you a date, and we'll let you know. We're gonna start coming out. So it'll be a very planned, very publicly announced, and very fair timeframe, but yes, you will need to get compliant with the law.
Okay, good. And there's going to be no limits on the licenses or the acreage to become a farmer in the hemp industry. What about minimums? That's been a topic that's really scared farmers in Florida because of the issue that came out with medical marijuana, and that's what we have to go by.
Right. So minimum number of acres or land?
Acres, years,
No.
Okay, good.
No. Now, I'm going to be honest, we are not going to allow home grow because to enforce that in year one would be huge. And we were given no fee authority by the legislative body. So currently, to get a cultivation permit, all we're asking is that you pay for your background check, which falls under $50. So we have no budget to start this program. So we're methodically starting it step by step.
Thank you. And Congressman Varela, for the Cannabis Trade Federation, do y'all have like a specific set of like a policy platform that you're working on? And if so, what is it?
We do, and the crux of it is the STATES Act. I mean, we want to do more, and there are a lot of equity issues that people bring up, and we certainly don't dismiss those. On the contrary, we're actually encouraging the members of the Federation, the companies who have joined, to adopt diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, right? Because obviously the victims of our terrible cannabis laws have been lower income, minority people over the years, and we want to make sure that this industry, as it blossoms, gives people from those communities, me being someone from one of those communities, the opportunity to participate, to grow with the industry, and of course, hopefully in some way to make up for all the damage that has been done over a long period of time. But for this Congress, the goal is the STATES Act. And there will be a window, believe it or not, maybe early next year as we're getting close to the election, but not too close. Members of Congress of both parties, maybe even the president, are going to say, we want to show that we did something. We want something to run on. We want to show that we were able to work together, at least on one thing. Last Congress, it was criminal justice reform. That was a miracle. It's really one of the few bipartisan initiatives that have successfully come out of Washington. This can be another one. And that's why your engagement with the Federation is so critical, because we're gearing up for the opening of that political window towards the beginning of next year. And there's some political dynamics that are favorable. This has been reported on. He's a friend of mine, but I'm happy to say it. Senator Gardner from Colorado. He wants to get this done. This would be a big achievement for him, and he's running for re-election in 2020. So we see an opportunity. We just need to continue building that critical mass, that momentum, making sure that members of Congress here in Florida, you all operate all over the state, yet not every member of Congress from our state supports the STATES Act or other reforms. It's changing, it's getting better. We have ultra-conservative members like Matt Gates from the Panhandle, who's a leader on this issue. That's a good thing. I tell people, whether you agree with Matt or not on everything else he says, that's fine, but on this issue, he's not just saying the right things, but he's really been a driver of change in Congress, and he's also a close advisor of Governor DeSantis, who has made some good decisions here in the early going. So we need to continue building that coalition, and again, if we get this done this year, I mean, no one can imagine just how beneficial it will be to the average American, but specifically to those who are involved in the industry.
Thank you. The States Act would be huge, obviously, if we can get that through. Recently a lot of talk has been about potential major action at the federal level, maybe even descheduling, or do you see that happening within the next 2 to 4 years, or is that just talking heads?
I think maybe if you stretch it out to 4 years, that is possible, and certainly we all support that. With the States Act, we can essentially get the same thing without the drama and the resistance that I think you would get if you tried to change the policy in an absolute way. I think there's still a sufficient number of senators from very conservative states that have not legalized, in some cases, any kind of cannabis products for any use. So I think for this Congress, that goal's a little premature, but if we get the States Act done, it's a natural next step.
That makes total sense. So everyone definitely take his advice to heart and get involved, even if at a minimum, all you do is reach out and pick up the phone and call your elected representative. If you call them and let them know that you're a constituent of their district, they will make time for you to sit and speak with them. And the more of us that get out there and champion the States Act, the more likely those on the fence will, get on board with it, because they do work for us, and at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're getting feedback on. So we need to be in there speaking to them. If you have the ability to join the Cannabis Trade Federation, get involved on a bigger level.
Yeah, and by the way, something else the Federation can offer you is intel, right? We know which members are thinking about this issue. We know which members are maybe feeling some pressure in their districts, and 2 or 3 phone calls, maybe a visit from a small business in their districts could make the difference. This is about counting votes, so.
Yeah, definitely get involved, and if you want to find out more ways to get involved, I'll be at the side after this. Come up to me and I'll get you some more information on that. Director Bell, in my opening statements, I mentioned I've had a few banking accounts shut down over the years. One time it was actually because I told them that I blogged and I was writing about medical marijuana. You have a lot of experience helping businesses navigate the banking issue. Could you give some advice to the entrepreneurs in the audience on the best way to handle this at the current time?
Yes, and I want to say thank you for that bill you are working on, because that is so important. You have no idea. It's so many levels. So please do get involved in this. So 30-year banker, and my niche before I left banking was really to bank the entertainment industry. So that is a high-risk industry also, believe it or not. And it taught me a lot about compliance and all of that. And if you come across having any connection to money that has flowed through that industry, they're going to shut your account down if they find it. Finding it is the key there. They are getting smarter about finding them. And unfortunately, for somebody that's honest and they tell their banker the right thing, they'll get closed down. Currently, that's getting better. When I retired from banking 3 years ago, one of the things I did was go out to Colorado and work with a group out there that was pioneering banking the industry. And we traveled the country educating people on how to bank the industry. It's not illegal to bank it, you just have to have a very buttoned-down program on how you're going to do it. So there are 2 banks in our state that happily bank this industry. And I do believe that there'll be more and more. I get inquiries all the time, even in my current job. I would love to see us be loyal to those that were loyal to us and went out on a limb and said, we like you guys, we're going to bank your industry, we see the value in it. So there are 2 banks, and I'm glad to share those names with anybody who wants to ask me. It is First Federal Bank in Lake City and Lafayette State Bank in Live Oak. And you don't have to live in that area to get accounts with them. They will gladly open accounts wherever you are in the state. One of them is a state charter bank and one is a OCC charter bank. So they know how to do it, and they are doing it. And they've been doing it, one of them's been doing it for 3 years.
What were the 2 again?
It's called First Federal Bank in Lake City and Lafayette State Bank in Live Oak. And they're both right up there at the I-10, I-75 intersection at the top of the state. So be honest with your banker. You're either going to have a bank say yes or no. If it is actually cannabis with high THC, I call it now, you're probably going to want to go to a bank that has, like these 2 banks that have a compliant program with what the banking regulators call Tier 1 accounts. That means those accounts touch cannabis money. And they want to make sure that's not laundered money. So you're probably going to want to go there. If you are not actually a licensee and growing it, you're really a Tier 2 or a Tier 3, and the regulators are now getting comfortable enough that they understand almost anybody can bank those accounts. But it has taken some time and some training for those regulators to get comfortable with it. And when I would go out and we'd talk to them and train them, you would have to understand that these are just people who are government officials trying to do their job, trying to learn the laws too, and they just want to keep their job. So they're going to do the conservative approach so they don't get in trouble. So education has been empowering for them, and that's why I think also this is key. It would give them a huge comfort, and it would open up the floodgates for everybody to get comfortable banking this industry. One of the things that I tell people that are in the hemp space is hemp is now descheduled. Anybody should be able to bank it. If you're having a challenge with your bank in that area, have them call me and I'll walk them through it as a banker. And I do that on a regular basis. One of my favorite things I said to a longtime banker friend who understands the industry, who was questioning me on Wednesday, and I said, listen, banks now think they're supposed to monitor to make sure your products are compliant, your THC level is good, you have legal products. And I said to him, let me just ask you this. When you bank a convenience store, do you go in and make sure every cigarette package has a tax stamp on it? When you bank a liquor store, do you monitor them and make sure they're not selling to minors and that they're buying from the right place? So all of that said, you're in my lane, get out of my lane. You're not the regulator. You're a bank. Your job is to monitor money flow. So stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. You're not responsible for regulating the compliance of that business. That's my job. You're not going to get in trouble if that business becomes uncompliant. I do, you don't. So share that with them if they start to question you. And I think it'll help a lot.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the 2 banks that you did mention, all of the attendees can be completely honest about what's going on, right? They're not going to get in trouble. All right. I just want to make sure, because I've told people to go to those banks before, and they still have a natural hesitation to not want to be completely upfront. I just want to make sure everyone understood it.
I just met with the head of First Federal's program Saturday morning to clarify some questions they had. And no, they'll happily open them fast.
Great. So that's some really good information for you. I'll make sure that you jotted that down. Congressman Varela, I know you do a lot of work at the federal level, but as a native Floridian, there's an issue that's very important to a lot of us here, and that is the Regulate Florida ballot initiative that just recently reached Supreme Court review. And that is the ballot initiative to regulate marijuana in a manner similar to alcohol. Do you support that?
Generally, I do. I want to read up on it a little more. I don't know if I want the three-tier system for marijuana. I mean, it was a good idea at one point. People have a lot of questions about it today. But yes, generally, marijuana should be treated the same way alcohol is treated.
Excellent.
Take some questions.
All right. We have about 10 minutes left, and we're going to open it up for Q&A. And Brasco's got the mic right there. Gentleman in the back.
Good morning. I have a question for both Director Bell and Congressman. It revolves around vertical integration. So recently a Florida court ruled that the vertical integration model is unconstitutional here in Florida. So I just wanted to get your thoughts, Director Bell, on that. How you see vertical integration, where you think that process is going to go. For the Congressman, you had mentioned, and I applaud it, the injustice that's suffered by lower socioeconomic communities within the cannabis space, more specifically due to the draconian drug laws that have transpired throughout the years. Given the vertical integration model, how do you juxtapose that intention with helping the lower socioeconomic communities here in Florida to participate and reap benefits from the cannabis industry? Thank you.
Let me go first.
Go ahead.
What I can tell you is at the Federation, and we're just starting this, we have a big meeting in September. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force, and what we would like to do is for the industry to set standards itself, to impose standards on itself in order to give people from aggrieved communities the opportunity to not just work in the industry, but to be shareholders, to really grow together with the industry. So we don't have the results of that and exactly what it's going to look like, but the other day we were talking about it, and I said, what a wonderful phenomenon that an industry that is on the cusp of growing would be thinking about what it can do, not because the government is imposing it, at least not yet, what it can do to right so many of the injustices of the past. So we're working on it. I think we'll have a product by the end of the year. Anyone any company who wants to be on the board of the Cannabis Trade Federation will have to adopt these policies and will have to practice them in their daily operations. So that's what we have to offer for now, and we're certainly open to legislative solutions that some in Congress are already proposing.
So his question was in regards to the most recent DCA ruling on a Leon County ruling on a lawsuit that said vertical integration was unconstitutional based on the amendment that was passed by the public. And the court upheld part, or the ruling that the DCA gave was that they agreed on part of it. I've heard good arguments on both sides. I understand both sides. I would have to say I'm neutral on where we go with that. I think what will happen here in Florida, from what I heard in Tallahassee last week, is that ruling is going to get sent back to that panel, and they're going to ask for the full panel of judges, not just 3, to rule on it again, or give an analysis of that, or feedback of it again, what they're going to say. So I think we're in for another change.
Good morning. This is for Holly Bell. Welcome to Florida.
Thank you.
Walter Ross Farmhouse Tomatoes. I'm sitting on a completed MMTC application, ready to go. Developed it many months, a year. Do you have any comment on a revision of this application and any projected submission date after the patient card count reaches 300,000?
So I don't, did you say you grew tomatoes?
Yeah, hydroponic tomatoes here in Palm Beach County.
Okay. Fun fact, good tomato growers are good cannabis growers.
Oh yeah, these are the best. You can find them in Whole Foods, Fresh Market. I stand, yeah. So you don't know about any revisions to the application, aside from what's going on with the vertical?
I do not. Cornucopia actually is over medical marijuana.
Okay.
And that's her group that decides that. What I will say is this, they've got a staff of about 20. They were originally supposed to have around 74, 78. They never got those under the previous governor. So they have 22 licenses out the door. She recently issued 8 in the last 2 or 3 months. She has 3 more under the current formula that can go out the door. I don't know when they plan on doing that. So they keep that.
3 being the 2 citrus preference and the black farmer.
Probably, yes. That's what she's holding.
The next should be just the 4 licenses when they hit the 300.
Right. So no, I wouldn't expect any to be granted with this appeal going on with the DCA and the vertical integration. I'll be honest, I will go out there and say this. They are so busy now overseeing what they have. I can't imagine how you would oversee 100 licenses with a staff of 20. That would be really hard. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but I do believe that DeSantis will get us to an answer.
Right, we're closer than farther.
Yes, I do believe he has a plan.
Excellent, thank you.
Hello, Holly. Just curious, when do you feel like the hemp rules may be finalized or a new version may come out and we can start getting our hemp companies and growers going and started situated?
So I mentioned this earlier. I've been out all week, Michael, speaking, and the team has been working on it. We closed public written commentary on July 19th. So we got well over 100, and some were several pages. Great feedback, excellent feedback. Thank you to everybody that did that. So I'm thinking in the next couple weeks, we'll have a pretty good final draft. So I'm hoping we can get them out about that time frame.
You were talking about supporting, Congressman, you were talking about supporting the States Act. Wouldn't that make it dependent on each governor that comes in, the rules?
Well, yeah, not each governor, but each state will decide its own policy. And for 30-some states, that means either medical marijuana or adult use. And the federal government will not interfere with those states or with businesses operating in those states. Those businesses will be able to bank. They'll pay the tax rate that every other company in this country pays. They'll be able to deduct business expenses. They won't have to worry about legal exposure. They'll be able to get loans at banks. So it's a federalist solution. It's not a national solution. It's a federalist solution.
Right, so
It defers to the
what
states.
What I'm getting at is the implication is with each change in government, couldn't it be changed back to the old? No?
You mean at the federal level or at the
Actually, it's at state level.
Well, I mean, if someone passed a constitutional amendment, I guess in
Yeah.
theory it could change, but that's highly unlikely. All the trends point to more and more voters and Americans being comfortable with the availability of marijuana and the regulation.
Can I say one thing? I think to his point, we could, a local state government could change anything now. Really, everybody's fear in the banking and all the other is from the feds. What would they do to us? It's not a state level fear. It is federal level. And what his bill is proposing is protection from that federal level, which would give people comfort at the state level that as long as they're adhering to their state law, they're okay. Correct?
That's right.
So it's very important.
So, just to follow up on that, it's over here, just so you know, people. With the federal versus state, you still have CBD was talked about on the FDA and, you know, being evaluated, and that's no short-term solution, you know, apparent. Now you see a state like Maine just saying, okay, CBD is legal in Maine, but only from Maine growers. We're not allowing any out-of-state growers. We have a state like New York that says, okay, you can have, but not in food and beverage. And they also may adopt the state-only grow system where it's only going to be products grown in the state of New York, allowed into products sold in the state of New York. These are things where you say, in one section we want to give states rights, but at the same time they may cripple, you know, all varieties of hemp businesses, specifically those using CBD on a national level. So where does that fit in as far as?
So in deferring to the states, and I need to do a little more research on this, I don't think it resolves the interstate commerce issue. And especially because different states have different laws. So it would just be, that would be the next step, right? That would be descheduling where you can carry the substance with you wherever you're going in the country. But I admit wholly that the States Act is not the final solution, nor is it a comprehensive solution, but without question, it would leave us in a much better place than we are today. And in states like Florida, within states like Florida, this industry can thrive and grow and bank and pay a fair tax rate and probably pay its employees more because it's going to have a lot more resources at its disposal. And look, that's incremental progress. And unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., these days, a lot of people are against that. You know, if I can't get everything I want, then no one gets anything. The argument we're making is there's a better way.
What do you think about the Marijuana Opportunity and Reinvestment Act?
I am not familiar with all its details. I assume it's one of the many bills that have been introduced this Congress in the House, and it probably includes a lot of the, or considers a lot of the equity concerns that we discussed earlier. Not knowing everything about it, I think we would generally support and welcome those kinds of ideas to the debate. Is it likely to pass this Congress? Absolutely not.
All right, everyone, that wraps up.
Can I just give, I was going to share the website for the Cannabis Trade Federation. It's CannabisTradeFederation.com. It's long, but CannabisTradeFederation.com. Visit, register, learn more about it, and hopefully you'll get involved.
All right, and the website that you had mentioned earlier, Director Bill, is that the Fresh from Florida website?
Yes.
Okay, so if you want the hemp information, go to the Fresh from Florida website. Director Bell, Congressman Varela, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you up here.